So, welcome everyone to the Sustainable Games Alliance Energy Efficiency Meetup. Today, I'm really happy to introduce Hauke Thießen to you today. He is the developer of the energy saving plugin for Unreal and also one of the technical coordinators of the Sustainable Games Alliance Energy Efficiency Network. And today's meetup is all about, this energy saving plugin and how to use it. We have with us also Mitch from Ever Curious Entertainment. Here he is. Um, and we also have Dietmar Hauser from Unreal. And they will basically, after Hauke presents the energy saving plugin and what is possible and how to implement it, they will, ask him questions, why or like how to use it, and more deeper questions. Feel free, because we are also like a little round, feel free to drop your questions into the chat. And let's all have fun. And now I hand over to Hauke.
Yes, then I take over from here. As you mentioned, we will start with a short introduction to the plugin, and then afterwards we go into the discussion and questions part. So I guess everyone can see my screen now. Can
Yes.
see the slides. Nice. Okay. So what is the energy saving plugin? The energy saving plugin is a plugin that I wrote for Unreal. Um, to go quickly over how this came to be. So last year, like a year ago, I wrote this article about developing games for devices with batteries, which was a collection of techniques to um, improve the energy efficiency of games. And so I write about technical game dev topics online from time to time, and most of the time it's very niche stuff read by a very small group of people. For some reason, this article got more attention, and I got a lot of great feedback, and people reached out to me and told me, yeah, these really cool techniques. I tried them out myself, or I want to try them out in my next project I'm working on. So that was really nice to get all that pleasant feedback. But I did notice a pattern with that kind of feedback because it always went like this. So yeah, I like the article and some of the stuff in there is really nice. I would like to try that. Right now, the project that I'm currently working on is over time, over schedule, over budgets. The next deadline is really close. So right now it's not happening, but hopefully at some point later I will look into this. Um, and as everyone working in software development knows, this is just how it goes. Every day you have these awesome ideas, what to implement into your product, what to add there, new features, new comfort features, bonus features, really nice improvements. And then you notice, oh yeah, actually, you don't have time for all this awesome stuff. The thing just needs to work and get out of the door. So this was kind of frustrating because like the interest was there, it just very often doesn't fit into a production schedule. So recently I thought to myself, wait a minute, isn't that something that we have with other topics as well, not just energy efficiency? Because in software development, we rarely write all our code, our tools on our own. We usually rely on existing code. We use engines like Unreal Unity, we use frameworks, we use APIs, open source libraries, we use OpenGL, DirectX. We use so many technologies and software that other people wrote. We build on these systems. And it would be like insane to not do that. And the same should be true for energy efficiency. Like ideally, this code for these features, for these optimizations, this code should be written once and then used in as many games as possible. And ideally, that code would also be open source so that people can adjust it to their needs, improve upon it, extend it, add new features over time, and so on. And so, I just went for it and my very humble approach to this problem was, okay, let's just write a plugin for Unreal to at least implement some of these energy saving techniques. And that was the energy saving plugin for Unreal. Unreal, because I'm working with Unreal every day, it's the engine I'm most familiar with, so that was a no-brainer. Um, and to make it even easier on myself, for the first version, I just relied on a white paper written by Epic Games about the energy efficiency optimizations in Fortnite. So I already had like a blueprint there, a guideline on how to tackle this problem. And so the plugin came to be. If you want to try out the plugin, I recommend you to get it or to visit the site sustainablegamesalliance.org services resources, because there you have a nice collection of, like, there's a link to this plugin, but also to other plugins and other resources. So it's a good idea to start there on your journey. But you can also just get it directly from GitHub or even Fab. So what does the energy saving plugin do? So if you are old enough to have witnessed screensavers, I know most people here are, then you know how it works, like how a screensaver works. Like every frame, we check how much time has passed since the last input. So like when did the user click the mouse button, push a button, move the mouse the last time? And if that time exceeds a certain threshold, like let's say 30 seconds, then we know, okay, the user is probably idle. So we can limit the frame rate, we can reduce the resolution, and this helps us to save energy because the GPU doesn't have to do that much work anymore. And after even an even longer time, it even disables rendering completely. So at that point, you just have a black screen, which is fine at that point, because if the user didn't make any inputs for several minutes, then we can safely assume that the user is not playing the game anymore. And then once you press a key again as a user, the plugin notices immediately, and in the next frame you have your rendering at the original resolution and frame rate, and everything works just fine. So this is like a really important detail here. Like the gameplay experience is not compromised in any way. So as mentioned, the main goal here with this plugin is to make it really easy to enable this stuff. So you don't have to write the code on your own. And the installation, the setup is relatively easy. So you can just download the plugin. You put it in Unreal's plugins directory. Can either be the project or engine folder. You enable the plugin in the project settings. You restart the editor. Unreal then compiles the code for you, and then the plugin is active and enabled, and immediately like already works with default settings. You can then use several console variables shown at the bottom there to control and adjust the behavior. And that's like pretty much it. That already works. So you can do this like in 30 minutes and you have this active in your game. Um, at that point, like for a finished commercial product, you probably want to improve some things here and there. So, for example, if your game has cut scenes, like cinematic stuff, you probably want to disable the plugin here and there, because if you have a 5-minute cutscene, chances are there's no input in 5 minutes. So the user gets like 30 seconds of a smooth cutscene, and then 4 minutes 30, like a very, very stuttering cutscenes at a low resolution. You don't want that. So you probably want to add this to your cinematics system. You can do this, for example, in blueprints. You can see it in the screenshot at the bottom right. So you just get the energy saver subsystem, and you set the variable is energy saving allowed to false, and then after the cutscene, you set it to true again, and that's it. So relatively easy to implement. And then I would also strongly advise you to add some settings to your game's settings menu. So as mentioned, there are these console variables. And yeah, using these in the settings menu, exposing them to a user is relatively trivial to do. And this way, players can then uh, adjust the settings so that they don't get annoyed by the energy saving being too aggressive or something. Um, So, as I said, this is easy to do. It works out of the box pretty much. I guess then the next question is how effective is that? This is a bit trickier to answer because it heavily depends on like the game that the plugin is used for. For example, in a racing game, you can basically assume that as soon as you have like 5 seconds of inactivity, the player is not playing the game anymore because in a racing game you can't take a break for 5 seconds, obviously. So you can set this threshold really small. In a turn-based strategy game, you probably want to set the threshold to like several minutes because it's not uncommon in a turn-based game to like just look at the screen, just thinking about the next turn. So there the threshold needs to be higher. So yeah, the effectiveness depends on many factors, and there's not a lot of data available out there about how much time people actually spend playing the games. Like how much, like what percentage of the play time is idle time. So I can at this point only discuss like ballpark figures. Ben from the SGA estimated like 15%, and I feel like yeah, that's about right. So you can have like assuming that you can reduce the energy consumption in the energy saving mode by like 75%, and assuming that players spend like 20% actually not playing the game while the game is running, then that's in combination 15% energy saved in total. Obviously, these are like very rough figures, but like essentially there is a substantial impact, which is not that bad because the plugin is like 10 lines of code and can implement it in one afternoon. So that's really not that bad. Um, in the mentioned white paper, Epic claims that their energy saving implementation in Fortnite saves around 200 megawatt hours per day, um, which, yeah, I'm not sure how realistic that is, but it seems, I guess, plausible. And since they only have this active during the menus, not during gameplay, I would expect the savings with this plugin to be higher. But yeah, I would like to know better numbers about that. So actually, I'm using this opportunity. If you are right now working on a game with some kind of telemetry feature, where like you get like player information sent back to you, this would be a worthwhile endeavor to like maybe get that data from your players to see how much this actually helps you to save energy. Because I think that at scale, this can make a difference. I just don't know the exact numbers. Yeah, and that is already pretty much everything I wanted to share about the plugin at this point before going into this discussion part. Just very quick, I wanted to give a quick shout out to other energy saving plugins that already exist. So I think I published the first version of the energy saving plugin in early January, and there are already similar plugins for other engines. So Oliver Stock wrote a very similar plugin for Unity, and there's a Godot plugin by Bold Beetle Games. So this is really awesome to see that there are already very similar plugins for the other two big game engines out there. And even better, all these three plugins are open source. Like you can get the source code not just to my plugin, but also to the plugins, the Unity and Godot energy saving plugins. You can get the source code for these plugins on GitHub. You can have a look, you can modify it. So other developers can extend these plugins, and hopefully um, these plugins will develop over time in the coming years. Yeah, so if you haven't, I would recommend checking them out, either my plugin or the other plugins. And that was that part of the meetup.
Well, I can jump in a little bit. Thank you very much. That was, I mean, it's super interesting. So I have a bunch of questions. I know Dietmar does as well. So I mean, we can just kind of hop right in, I guess. But um,
Should we maybe introduce ourselves as well, or has
oh,
everybody read the descriptions?
yeah, that's
I
probably not
guess
the worst
it can't
idea.
hurt.
Why don't you go ahead first, Dietmar?
Right, yeah. So you've already heard my name, and it's on the screen. I've been a programmer for in the games industry for a quarter century now. I currently work at Epic Games. Important, I do not represent Epic Games. My opinions are my own. And yeah, my focus is on efficiency, and the face of efficiency in computer games has kind of shifted in the last, let's say, 25 years. In the olden days, we wanted to squeeze all the power out of it, and nowadays, actually, we want to consume as little power as possible to be good citizens in the ecosystem, and having the plugin available that helps with that is a good thing. I think. Mitch?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for myself, I've been in games for about 20 years. I am less on the technical side than Dietmar or Hauke, but I do still dabble there. I currently run a game studio called Ever Curious. We're a smaller indie studio, so I find this kind of stuff super interesting for us because, as Hauke has kind of pointed out in some of his previous talks and blog posts, it's not an easy thing when you're a small team and you have that huge backlog to prioritize things like this. Um, and so just having access to something that makes it a lot easier opens up a lot of, I think it opens it up to a lot more smaller studios, smaller teams like us that really could and should be using this kind of stuff, but may overlook it just because it's one thing in a pile of many. And so I think it's super helpful. Previously to this, I've worked kind of at a lot of bigger studios. So I also think it's interesting from the perspective of how it could be used by larger studios. And I guess more broadly, how we can start looking at this kind of plugin as something that can maybe hopefully be standardized a little bit more as a practice across the board. So yeah, that's I guess a little bit about me. I should say, yeah, my background is mostly in game design, so I also find which can maybe go into some of the questions a little bit, but I find it really nice just kind of reading and watching some of what Hauke's gone through in terms of how it's also looking at the impacts on player experience, because obviously when we're talking about these things, we're not talking about something that makes the play experience better. So it's important that it's also being looked at from the perspective of does it impact or not how a player is going to be experiencing the game. So yeah, I've been finding that super interesting. I guess one of the questions that I have, if you've actually had some chance implementing this kind of stuff, is if you have any thoughts on how to use a plugin like this and expose it to users in a way where they will actually want to engage with it and use it. I think it's an interesting kind of problem that I've been thinking about. So I have more questions about some of your other experience, but one of them was around, you brought up things like, frame rate limiting and stuff like that as being important. And that's an example of something where I think, a lot of gamers, higher number is better. So why would I want to limit the number from going higher? So yeah, I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on how we can use these plugins and expose them to players in a way where they're going to actually be excited to make use of this instead of looking at it as something that could take a hit on their experience, which I think you're already doing a really great job of in the plugin and stuff. So yeah, just curious if you have any more thoughts on any of that side of things.
In general, I have the very strong belief that you should not expose things to the player or the user in general if you already know what the correct setting is. Like I'm a tech artist by trade. I'm not a programmer. So my user is usually like an artist somewhere working with the Unreal editor or doing environment art, for example. And artists tend to like ask for options to adjust things, like, oh, I would like to change that color. Oh, I would like to adjust that setting on each instance of this rock that I placed in the level. And I'm like, you placed 5,000 rocks in this level. Why do you want to edit every rock individually? So I'm no stranger to like people wanting control, and I'm very aware that giving options to people is not always just a good thing, because it's very easy to have like too many options, and then people can like create setups that don't make any sense. So in general, I would say the first step should be to have a reasonable default. So if you want something to be enabled, enable it by default. And then somewhere in the settings for advanced users, to tell the user, okay, if you want to, you can change it, but the default is already like the behavior that I expect. Yeah, that would be my first instinct. And then yeah, it's all about communication. So stuff like limiting frame rates. Yeah, it can easily be perceived as some compromise. So it's all about mentioning like, yeah, hey, yeah, we kept the frame rate, but as a bonus, now don't have any heat-induced slowdowns anymore, or stuff like that. So always find the advantages and the good news about these techniques. Otherwise, yeah, people can have very strong reactions because they have the feeling that something's taken away from them.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, don't take away things from people. That's also why the approach in the plugin is the screensaver approach, more or less, is clever, because it takes away from people when they're not even at the game, so they don't notice. They only notice when they come back and see, okay, well, maybe I should have paused the game or even turned it off. What I wanted to know, because as game developers, we are afflicted with the disease of always wanting to optimize everything to death, not only as in making as fast as possible, get the highest frame rates, but also think every problem through to the deepest levels you can find, and then find solutions for all these things. And so I find it very refreshing to hear the answer that default should be reasonable. And if everybody, or not everybody, if like 50% of Unreal Engine games use that default, spend the like 1 hour or whatever it takes to put the plugin in and live with the default, then so much would be gained already, and we don't need to optimize this. However, um, from the questions that are pouring in from the audience already, I can see that people want to customize it and see changes. So, are you open to for feedback? Do you have like a GitHub issues thing where people could ask you to for improvements and things like that?
Oh, please do that. I'm looking at my inbox daily. Not daily, but yeah, please fill my inbox with issues and feature requests or pull requests. That's what GitHub is there for.
So
Um,
you're not done with it. You have
no, I'm not. Like I wrote this plugin in a relatively short amount of time, and I'm not a programmer, not like an experienced programmer. I program here and there. So I know there are like people who are like deeper into some of these topics, could already like improve things or add smarter options here and there.
so you're also open to pull requests and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, good to hear. Mitch, do you have something?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely curious about that too, because I mean, I think the open source side is really potentially powerful in the long term if people are, the community is getting involved and kind of building out the features. I guess on the feature side, I'm curious, and like Dietmar may also have some insight into this. So like I mentioned in some of your previous talks, you've talked about a couple of interesting techniques that are obviously not a part of the plugin because they're kind of specific to a game. So like, for instance, like when you blur a background in a menu, instead of having the game rendering, throwing a screenshot up, or just not showing the game, or same with frame limiting, stuff like that, which could be more specific to different games. So obviously they're not necessarily all part of the plugin. So I'm curious if there's other techniques that exist or other systems in Unreal, because I know there's quite a lot of systems in Unreal already for optimization of these kind of things. I mean, Fortnite has got a lot of those at play. So is there other systems that you know of that you think are interesting or would be interesting to integrate into the plugin, or that you just think developers should be knowing about on the side of this? Because I think a lot of what the good of the plugin is also that it exposes us to things that, features that I know are part of Unreal, but we didn't even know about or how to use.
So one thing I have like on my list, on my backlog, I mentioned that the plugin after some time even disables rendering completely. Then you have a black screen, which is not ideal. And it's relatively easy to just take a screenshot, then disable the rendering and show the screenshot instead. So it's not that jarring anymore. I actually have like a work in progress version here on my PC, where it actually like I figured out the screenshot taking stuff. But then to like really implement that, I then need to like spawn like a UI element with a screenshot on top, and I'm not sure how if I would add that to the plugin, if it would be like general enough in its use case. Like maybe there are games that do very certain specific things with their UI, and then I just spawn some UI element there, and it completely like clashes with what they have set up in the game already. So I'm like I'm now kind of hesitant to add it, but it would definitely be a nice addition to have this feature where like, okay, we disable the rendering, but you still see the last rendered frame from then on. So yeah, next one.
Yeah, that's very cool. One thing I will say, just from my perspective as a developer, if you did implement something like that, even if it didn't work with the game, I would be happy if it was a part of the plugin that I could enable or disable as needed, because it is a useful feature, and if you don't need it, it's easy.
Maybe I just create like a screenshot function in the plugin, and then in the documentation it tells you, hey, if you're using this plugin, there's also this screenshot function. Feel free to use that to then display the last screenshot. Stuff like that, where like 50% of the bridge is built, and then the user can add the second part of that bridge.
It's always a good idea to include a tool set as well, and instructions for the more advanced users. But I would urge you to stay on the default path as much as possible. So if you find a nifty way to get it in, and I think you can probably can with I think Slate has a callback where you get a chance to plop something on the screen just before it's shown, and also grab the screen. Then you should definitely do that. Okay, I don't want to really fall into the feature creep modus, but I saw from your presentation that you claim your plugin is in beta status. So do you have like a plan to release, or is it just there until it gets some more testing under its hood?
The screenshot in the presentation, that was still the beta version. By now, I think I don't have the beta tag anymore. But truth be told, like I'm a solo developer, like this label beta doesn't say that much. Like it's not like I have like this process where like there are like some green lights and testers, and there's like some checklist. It's just like I looked at it and I was like, yeah, okay, I think this works good enough. Let's remove the beta label.
Yes, and I did not hear. Did you remove it now, or is it still on there?
I think it's not there anymore.
Okay, that's good. Because if it's there, then some build processing UE will spit out, hey, you're using beta plugins, blah blah. So that might actually be an obstacle for people adding it. So let's say one person in the team who is the tree hugger put the plugin in, and then some build engineer down the line sees, oh, there's a better plugin that's not going in. I kick it out again.
I mean, the usual Unreal experience is that you use at least 3 to 5 experimental plugins where Epic is like, let's have this experimental tag there just to be safe, but like people are already shipping games with it. But yeah, good point. Maybe I
Yeah,
should make sure that
see
it's
that,
not there
yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I encourage you to get rid of it as quick as possible. A question to the moderator. When are we taking audience questions, or can we let the audience know how long they have to keep their hands up?
You can also let them in now if we're a small round.
Yeah, then I guess Patrick, you have your hand up. Ask away.
Fantastic. Hi, my name is Patrick. I'm associate professor in the game design department. I'm also working in the academic meetup as a co-organizer for SGA. First editor of this book, The Game Needs to Change Towards Sustainability in Game Design. Thank you, Hauke. Really cool plugin. Like, few questions. You already sent this over to us, and now I finally have one of our teachers in programming that were interested in this. He couldn't make it now, but he wants to watch the recording then. So I think that sort of perspective of embedding that as something that is important to also integrate in game design education, right, as something that people who come out of these educations then already think about when they start their work, that this is an important aspect of saving resources in that way, I think would be useful. So I hope that we can do more with that in the future. Like, one more thing to cram in, maybe not the development schedule of a studio, but the educational schedule of a university, right? So sort of similar problem. But in terms of communicating the benefit to users, like players or something, right? Would it not be possible to show how much energy you are, like, to a developer, how much energy this is saving, so that you can communicate this also to players, right? Especially when energy prices have been skyrocketing in the past for short periods of time, suddenly people were quite interested in how much it costs to play a particular game and which difference that could be. And we are now again looking at political reality where that might be the case, right? So that should definitely be a pull to want to optimize your game or play it on a level where, I don't know, you bought the Witcher game. It's going to cost you $60 to buy it. Does it cost you another 120 to play just for electricity? Or can you do something about that price tag? Right? That would be an interesting perspective. And then if you spend less money on electricity, maybe you have more money to spend on games. So what would be ways of communicating that perspective? Because I think that is something that I haven't seen enough. And maybe getting that across to games journalists or other people that are sort of intermediating and part of that conversation that isn't really happening yet.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Measuring this stuff is honestly like another big topic. So I'm probably not the right person to like tell you that much about this topic. There's Torbjörn
Söderman.
What was Söderman? Yeah, was not entirely sure about the last name. Who had recently was here at the meetup and gave a talk about energy optimization in Goals, a free-to-play football game. And he is working on this topic of like also measuring the power consumption on different devices and getting that information, because it's not super trivial like to get this information from like different GPUs and different devices. You need to like communicate with some APIs from NVIDIA and AMD. So yeah, it's not trivial to get that information. But it would definitely be interesting to have this in a game where it tells you, hey, I just saved you this much energy, and like then according to the energy prices in your region, you can then calculate how much money you saved. Yeah, definitely a super interesting endeavor, but definitely more complicated than the plugin itself in its current form.
Maybe like a quick yeah note on that. So there will be a platform which will highlight games which you can play longer because they save energy. So basically, they take the other angle. They don't say this saves your cost, like it's energy efficient and it saves you cost. They take the angle of saying if you play this game, you can play it longer than other games because it uses up like less battery. So, but yeah, the total program will launch in like 2 weeks or something. Then you will hear more. But yeah, so there is this other angle, just saying to developers, to players, if you play this game, then maybe your Steam Deck will survive train ride or something. So yeah.
It's interesting too. Actually, those are interesting kind of approaches to it. I also, I mean, this is a question more for from a very naive standpoint. So I think somebody way more technical could maybe answer. But I also wonder if there's not an argument to be made that it makes your hardware last a bit longer to not have it running at full capacity all the time.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Actually, in a way previous job, we ran stuff on custom hardware, which was manufactured or assembled in-house, and actually ran like permanent tests with those. And one software change introduced uh, when the hardware was not being used, it was playing some ads as course, and they used a video player that used 100% of CPU time. And on the machines, some of the Elcos dried out within 3 months, the ones that were sitting next to the CPU because the CPU was running so hot all the time. It changed to a different video player, which then solved the issue. But these machines are on like if not 24 hours a day, like 9 to however long a pub is open or something like that. And this makes a pretty big impact to the lifetime of electronics. So the hotter you run stuff, the quicker it will break.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's super interesting because I could see, I mean, just for what Patrick was saying as well, even if we don't give like a dollar amount, being able to just say, hey, this setting will extend the lifetime of your nowadays extremely expensive RAM and GPU, and like there, guess there's quite a bit maybe to surface on that. On a different but somewhat related topic, I'm curious. So I think I might be remembering this wrong because I think I just read you comment on like a LinkedIn post or something that there's also some settings in Unreal for developers that can have similar effects. And that is just one thing, just as a dev, like we're talking about people leaving their games running, but I mean, let's be honest, I have Unreal Engine open probably for 12 hours a day on my computer, and that's not exactly necessarily great from an energy efficiency standpoint. I think I saw you talking about some settings. Is there like a part of the plugin or a part of even just the conversation that should be around how we also apply some of these techniques to game engines?
That's a good point. I remember that comment that you mentioned. So Unreal, the Unreal editor has this checkbox in the viewport menu that where you can toggle off real-time rendering. And when you do that, in the editor, it just doesn't render every frame. It just stores the last frame, and whenever you change anything in the editor, then it renders again 2 frames. Which is not something you would use in a game, but for the editor, it makes sense because it's quite common for people, especially for designers, to like open the Unreal editor and you have then like 12 gigabytes of VRAM. You have like the GPU is chugging all your power, and you only open the editor to like edit some data tables or to like do some scripting, like stuff where you don't even need the level editor. And then you spend like 8 hours working in a data table. In the background, your viewport is rendered the entire time. So this toggle to disable real-time rendering, I use it all the time, and I know that many people aren't aware of it. which is a shame because it's really useful. Yeah, there is a plugin on Fab that adds this functionality that rendering gets disabled after a certain time threshold, similar to my plugin. So yeah, so if you're a developer and you notice that like if you're, for example, if you are a designer who doesn't like do environment art and you are only working on data tables most of the time, this can really make a big difference.
Yeah, that's good to know because yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I shamefully was not aware of that checkbox, as I'm sure I'm not aware of a
Most
lot of
people aren't.
And yeah,
Yes.
I'm that designer that's I'm either in Blueprint or data tables and probably don't need it, my computer rendering constantly. So it's good to know. Yeah.
So many checkboxes in the editor. I think by default, if it's not focused, it will also lower the frame rate. But a lot of people turn it off because at one point they need to have real-time updates while, for instance, for recording something on the screen, and then never turn it on again. We have another hand up from Chloe.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chloe. I work for Game Only, and we've developed Gyros, which is an environmental impact calculator for gaming companies. And we're working right now with the SGA to try and integrate the calculation standard in there. But so I wanted to add, and maybe it's a question and more of a feedback or a request for if eventually that could be something that might be interesting to add to the plugins is when it comes to the topic of a player opt-in and informing players of the impact of their choices. There's one use case that I've seen that was quite interesting, and actually you might have seen it from the Green Game Design website, where Ultros, it's a game that basically when you look at the graphic power option, they give an energy bar, an estimate energy bar of the energy consumption that the graphics choices of the player will mean. And they made a very simple data model. They put a watt meter on a watt power meter on a dev PC, and then they looked at the different options and how many watts it was consuming. Now they didn't choose to. They're not showing exactly how many watts it's consuming for the player, but at least they give an estimate, which at least helps players get an overview of what kind of efficiency or what is actually the meaning of the graphics options that they choose. So I'm just wondering if this is something that would be eventually on the roadmap um, as a
Uh,
little additional tool for developers.
yeah, I really like the concept in general. I think in most games nowadays, the options, the menus are not helpful at all for anyone but experienced pro gamers. Like all these technical terms are just thrown at you, and it's like, yeah, here, this is VSync, this is triple buffering, this is DLSS 4 or 5 or whatever, and like pro gamers, like hardcore gamers, like know what this is, but many people just sit there and are like, what are these settings? Like what is the visual impact? What is the gameplay impact? And then you have concepts like not just the FPS, but also like latency and VRAM and all these complex effects. So in general, I think this is a topic where like many games nowadays fail to like help the player to make an informed decision. Something like this power meter, even if it's not 100% accurate, yeah, would definitely help. Um, yeah, this is difficult. Adding this to a game, like you could like create a plugin that gives implements settings and then this power meter. But then I guess people like games like developers have to adjust that for their games because based on the content of the game, this changes. Um, so yeah, it's not trivial to do. Um, but I would really like to see that in more games. Yeah. But yeah, difficult to generalize, very difficult to to find a one size fits all solution. That's probably the challenge there.
Yeah, I would reckon that it's impossible unless being very intrusive to the PC system of the person running the game. So you can if someone was interested in that, you could like do it yourself by running like GPU temp or something and play with the settings and see how hot your GPU gets or your CPU gets. The hotter it gets, the more energy it uses and also wastes. So that's a pretty good measurement of the real world impact. But guessing that from the features, as there are so many hardware constellations out there, it's maybe AI could solve it, but that introduces opens
I
another can of worms that maybe we want to keep closed for this session.
I will say I do think I feel like the idea that it would not need to be accurate may be enough for that though. Like just giving, I think it's a great call to have a graph that just shows, hey, you're using more or less in a visual form without ever putting a number on it. That way you
Yeah.
don't have to, because yeah, I mean, I don't know how,
Mm.
yeah, that seems like it'd be a pretty tough task.
I'm always a fan of like taking very small steps to your target. So actually, even just putting a tooltip to the VSync option and telling the player, hey, VSync can help you save energy. Like even that would be an improvement already to like the current state that we have. And then we can like go from there and add a similar tooltip to like a frame rate cap or to some upsampling solution like one step after another. We don't have to start with the system that gives us accurate information about every option. Just having a tooltip that explains what VSync is would already be an improvement, to be honest.
Yes. Cesar has had his hand up for a while.
No, it's okay. Hi everyone. My name is Cesar. I am an imposter here. I'm entirely technical. I use IT tickets to turn on my computer. I work as a creative director I used to work for CI Games. I was the creative director for The Lords of the Fallen in 2023. I'm curious about something, and I missed the first 4 minutes of the meeting, so I apologize if this ground was covered. Incredibly stupid question coming right up. For a peer-to-peer online game, random example, Lords of the Fallen, let's say, will your system be compliant host-wise? And if it's so, because when you press start, it doesn't really start the game. There is no built-in system to suspend performance. And if the host benefits from such a system, will it impact online play in peer-to-peer? Sorry, I went around a bit, but I think you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. So I have very limited experience working on multiplayer games, basically none. I think it wouldn't have, like, I think it doesn't change that much because these energy optimizations are all about the rendering side, and this should be decoupled. So just because the resolution or the max frame rate changes, that shouldn't really affect anything on the multiplayer side of things. Um, when talking about competitive esports play, that changes. Like I mentioned Fortnite. In Fortnite, the energy saving mode is only active in the menus, not in the actual gameplay. Because if you are camping in Fortnite and inactive for 10 seconds because you're waiting to line up this shot, and then you want to like react and uh, go for the kill, and then you notice, oh, the frame rate is lower than expected because the energy saving mode got enabled. That's the kind of annoying. So there are probably some games where like you wouldn't want this possibly. I guess Lords of the Fallen is not that hardcore competitive, so wouldn't be a big factor there. So I think it should be fine.
Okay, well, the main scenario is just cooperation, because if you get invaded and you are suddenly thrown in a competitive environment, you die in 1 second. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'm effectively outlining a scenario where the host is idling because the cat jumped on the stove, and the other players are in the world doing things on the server, on the host, and the host idles, and then the automatic system kicks in. That was effectively my worst case scenario.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that would still work fine. Like the plugin in its current form doesn't change like gameplay stuff. It's only about rendering. Oh, that's not entirely true. Adjusting the frame rate can make some impact on the gameplay logic. I'm not okay. I'm not going to guarantee that there's no impact whatsoever, but I think it won't be noticeable.
It's complicated because UE has a very multi-threaded architecture. So if you don't touch the game thread, everything should run hunky-dory.
Copy that. Thank you for indulging me.
Patrick had a question as well, or no?
If we still have time, yeah, maybe a few minutes. No, like I mean, examples from Hauke's point of that estimations for what the energy is that is used in the game doesn't need to be perfect or sort of scientifically accurate as communication for players. I think is really spot on. Like we have this example from Ultros. That's a game that Hugo Bille has been the programmer on, and so he's been presenting about that a bit, where you see just a sort of energy bar that is being portrayed on the right when players put in their graphic settings. And he called that sort of like a very, very sort of liberal estimation that isn't as accurate as, for example, the standard would have to be when you do a proper sustainability reporting that you really need for example, for the SGA tool to really consider how your game is running on all kinds of devices. This is a very much better than nothing approach to giving players the possibility to take any kind of decision, right? It's better information than nothing. And it already sort of works. And yeah, like I have no idea what I am doing when I'm looking at the graphic settings of my games, like millions of buttons. I was like, this sounds like it's like, yeah, like so experimenting between hyper and normal or whatever settings there are, just trying to intuitively get it out. So I think these sort of what is the step that is better than nothing right now is like super good. We have Hugo presenting about that for academic meetup that is coming up in a few weeks. So he's going to be talking about that and specifically this approach of what is like a thing that you can hack together right now to make something better. So if that interests you, then in that conversation, you would be, of course, super welcome to join that as well. But yeah, I think that is the approach. Like it doesn't need any sort of scientific, rigorous estimation. It needs like something that's better than nothing for starters. Thank you.
Interesting. I think there's a baked into that. It's largely a UX problem. Like approach it from a user experience and understandability design standpoint or something. I had one more question quickly. Just it's less specifically about the plugin, but because SGA is obviously really trying to get the industry as a whole to be more energy efficient. One thing that I just think is interesting is that you obviously have a day job working at a game studio. And as you brought up, it can sometimes be hard to get studios to put the resources towards these things. And you clearly have a passion for it. So have you got any like advice for people that might be in similar situations? It's easy for me right now as a studio head, but I can imagine if you're at a studio trying to get a plugin like this or get some resources put towards it, it's not always easy. So, yeah, just curious if you have advice for folks that might want to get this kind of thing integrated into their studios on, how you've kind of approached it at your own job.
I can talk a bit about that. So right now I'm on a project that is on a game that's going to be released. Not even sure. I don't think that we have an official release date. I think 2027, 2028, like still like years in the future, or at least 1 year in the future. So like right now, that's not a topic that I'm working on because that's the kind of stuff that you add like in the last few months before release. Not like during pre-production or So in general, I think it always makes sense if you want to work on stuff like that. You need to you need to find the business case. For example, the last company I worked at, we worked on this theme park building game, Park Beyond, and I think like 3 months before we shipped, the Steam Deck was released. And suddenly it was like, hey, maybe we should look into the Steam Deck. There are people who are getting the Steam Decks. We should be verified. And then suddenly it's an interesting discussion because then you can say, hey, if we want to go for Steam Deck users, maybe we should look into battery life. And then suddenly you have like a reason to work on this ticket. So if you want to work on this topic, if you want to make your game more energy efficient, like maybe check out, hey, is there a significant audience that is playing your game on the Steam Deck or on the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode? And suddenly you have this business case internally where you can say, hey, this improves the experience for players out there, and then suddenly it changes like the dynamics of the conversation because it's not just like, oh, I would really like to add this because I think it's cool, and it's like, hey, this now could help us to like actually sell the game to people.
I think that's a very good point. Steam Deck is bringing the mobile gaming experience back to the mainstream, even though I'm convinced that half of the Steam Decks were sold to game developers showing off their prototypes. But nevertheless, having the Steam Deck check in your Steam list is a very prestigious thing to have. And then also playing nice with the hardware. And there's more coming from other vendors in that direction, I think is a very good argument to make. We already see that it has helped with lowering the system requirements for new games because Steam Deck is now the new low, and so games don't need the latest and greatest PC anymore to play somewhat nicely. People spend some time actually making it run nicely on the Steam Deck.
Yeah, I think the Steam Deck has single-handedly done so much for scalability settings across the board because suddenly it's like, oh, this doesn't run on the Steam Deck. Can we do anything? And then suddenly you get like a new graphics setting, something like that. So it's really helpful.
Guys, thank you so much. We are now running out of time. So, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who participated. And again, especially for Hauke to pioneering this field. I'm really excited to see what's coming next. And of course, if anyone implements this plugin, please send us your feedback, talk to Hauke, talk to us. And yeah, really looking forward. Thank you so much.